There are several pieces of legislation making their way through the State House to expand broadband internet access in West Virginia. A couple on each sides of the rotunda. My guests tonight have made the issue their top priority this legislative session. Natalie Roper is the executive director of Generation West Virginia, a group that represents young business interests in the state. Gaylene Miller is the state director of the AARP West Virginia, a nonprofit that represents the interests of West Virginians 50 and older. Thank you both so much for being here with me this evening.
Delighted to.
Thanks, Ashton.
So the Federal Communications Commission says 30% of West Virginians do not have access to broadband. When you look at rural areas of the state, that number goes up to 48%. It's a lot of people that are impacted by this. Why is this a priority, if each of you will tell me? Why is it a priority for your group? Gaylene, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Well, it's important for all of our communities to be connected and feel part of a wider community, but it's probably particularly important for older West Virginians. Everything from access to health care to social contacts, telemedicine, those kinds of things are hugely important to our older population and their families.
Natalie, why is this a priority for Generation West Virginia?
Well, Gaylene has touched on all of the things that are also important to young people. Increasing access to healthcare is important to the next generation. Access to education is really important too, through online learning. It's no news that we're losing too many of our young people here in West Virginia, and in order for us to compete with other states, we have to have access to high-speed internet. This creates jobs for the next generation, offers opportunities for telecommuting, and creates new opportunities for people to work from home for companies in other parts of the country and world as well as creating a really important opportunity for young entrepreneurs. Internet is often the first ingredient of starting a new business, and millennials are one of the most entrepreneurial generations our country's ever seen. So we want to make sure that young people can thrive in West Virginia, start their own businesses here, have access to information, participate civically. The broadband internet is now critical for all of those things.
Let's talk about a couple of the bills that are making their way through. Now, Senate Bill 614 was taken up in the Senate Finance Committee today and did make it out pretty quickly. They didn't really have much to discuss. It's a loan insurance program. House Bill 3093 will be put to a vote in that chamber tomorrow. And that bill does several things. Gaylene, I know it's one that you've been really interested in. Why don't you talk to us about it?
We're very excited about House Bill 3093 because, number one, in the budget climate we're in here in West Virginia, it's a revenue neutral bill. So it doesn't cost the state any money, but what it does is get government out of the way and allows entrepreneurs to do what they do best, and that's be creative and innovative and find ways to provide the service to areas that are underserved or unserved right now.
Natalie, I know this bill it contains a lot of permissive language. It says you don't have to do any of these things, but you're allowed to do them, and that's a provision that you really like.
We're excited that this creates what feels like a set of new tools that allows for community-based innovation, allows for communities to really take this challenge into their own hands and come up with creative solutions that are best fits for them. There really isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. And
it's not a one-size-fits-all problem.
That's true, that's true. And like we mentioned those statistics before, it's so much worse in rural West Virginia, and it poses such a big challenge to people. We talk about the difference between the middle mile and the last mile, and the last mile is that push to your individual home, and that's such an expensive part of the process.
It is, but one of the pieces of House Bill 3093 is it allows for the creation of cooperatives for the purposes of expanding broadband service to those unserved or underserved areas. And those cooperatives, as Natalie has mentioned, allows communities really to take the problem in their own hands and not wait for a solution to come to them, but they can be part of the solution.
And I know we've mentioned this, but this revenue neutral portion of the bill, as you all talk to lawmakers about how important this is to you, is that something that they're pointing out? Is that what interests them?
Of course. All of the conversations right now are around the budget, and broadband is an agreed upon problem. I think we've been advocating hard for it for a few years now. People know that this is an important challenge that our state is facing, and we have to make progress on it. To be able to make progress on it in a revenue neutral way is a win-win.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting that all of these pieces of legislation, none of them are the silver bullet, but each of them will provide us an opportunity to move that ball forward.
Now, I want to point out just quickly that Delegate Hanshaw is the co-sponsor of that House bill, and he says that the goal of that bill is to have access for all West Virginians by 2020. Is that possible, Gaylene? Do you think that's a possible goal to meet?
Well, I think it's a stretch goal, but something that we certainly should strive for.
Yeah. So, Natalie, this is an issue that's brought two very different groups of West Virginians together. Talk about why that's happened.
This is an issue that is important to all West Virginians, and all West Virginians care about all of the things that we're talking about here: jobs, healthcare, civic participation. And so this was an amazing partnership and an opportunity to work together on something that all of our membership cares about.
And it's going to make a difference for all West Virginians. You know, older West Virginians want their young people, their grandchildren, their children to be able to stay here in West Virginia and raise their families. So again, you know, across the generations, it just seemed like a great opportunity for us to work together and really make some differences for the state.
Gaylene Miller with the AARP and Natalie Roper with Generation West Virginia. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.